Hey everybody, Jack Clips Painting here with a new tutorial, and today we're going to be focusing on a really cool miniature. But first, the paints you'll need: some Stynylrez black primer, or primer of your choice, and some white primer from Stynylrez, or again, a white primer of your choice. We'll be starting out with some Game Color Extra Opaque Heavy Red, as well as some Vallejo Model Color Black Red. Also, you'll need some Game Air Bloody Red, or a red that's just as bright. Flat red usually works too, but I like bloody red. Also, some Wild Rider Red from Citadel. This is kind of an orangey bright red, so you can sub this if you need to. And then some Orange Fire from Vallejo Game Air. Again, this is just another really bright orange. You could sub this. It's pretty close to Troll Slayer Orange from Citadel. Some Model Color Black, or any normal base color black. I like using Model Color because of how it paints, but you can definitely sub that out. Secret Weapon Tire Black. This one's actually kind of important. I think it's a really good paint to have in your arsenal, so I recommend getting it. It's just a very unique kind of greenish blue black color. We're also going to be using some Thunderhawk Blue from Citadel, and some neutral gray, and you can use basically any mid-tone gray for this. On to the miniature. We got a really badass new miniature from Wargame-exclusive. Really cool miniature makers out of Russia or Poland, I think. One of those. But this guy is their Lord of Death. Totally not Mephiston from the Blood Angels. Comes with a really nice little base too. We won't be using this one. I'm going to be using an Elric's base when we get into the final looks, but just wanted to show you guys that he does come with a really cool textured base. And we're going to start off with some Stynylrez black primer, get that all over. Again, this is resin, so you want to make sure that as you're priming, you take it easy. Don't try to build up the primer too quickly because it might pool on you, and you definitely don't want that, especially in your prime coat. So just take your time, just do a little bit, move on to another spot. If it gets too wet, just let it dry out and hit it with another coat. And for this guy, we're going to be using a pre-shade method, so that's why we have the Stynylrez white primer. I'm going to push that through the airbrush at a very high angle and just kind of dust it over the miniature. I don't want to go too heavy, like I don't want to really go up to a pure white. I just want to get that white dusted onto the miniature so that all of those details are popped out and all of our upper surfaces have a stark contrast to our shadows, and it'll help our red look a little bit brighter and more vibrant. Just going to do that on both of these pieces. I left the backpack separate just because of all the little streamers of cloth coming off of it. It'll be easier to paint everything that way. We're going to start off with some Game Extra Opaque Heavy Red and our Vallejo Model Color Black Red, and I'm doing kind of a 50-50 mix. The extra opaque is a great red base color, but it's a little bright for what I wanted for our base. I wanted this to be kind of a darker, more maroon color red. So I just did a 50-50 mix of that with some flow improver in the airbrush, and I'm going to get that all over the sections of his armor. In the artwork for Mephiston, there's conflicts on his color scheme. Some of it shows his robes being red just like his armor. Some show it being black. I prefer the black robes just because it's a little bit more mean looking and it gives contrast, because I don't want this guy to just be one big giant blob of red. He's got a ton of detail in this model and I want to make sure that we pick that out. So for this guy, we're going to do red armor and a black robe. Our next color after that is going to be some bloody red. It's going to be pure by itself with some flow improver in there to help it not speckle up. It's a pretty thin airbrush paint, but sometimes it will speckle, so I always recommend a little bit of flow improver even if you're using pre-thinned airbrush paints, especially if you're using Citadel Air. Those are not very great in my opinion, but they do work if you put some flow improver in there and just help it out. And this is where we're going to start building up our vibrant red gradient, and we're going to be spraying this guy kind of from a high angle. The bloody red over our base color is kind of subtle, but red is kind of tricky. You want that more vibrant gradient to show up, so starting off with something more subtle works a little bit better. Next we're going to go to our Wild Rider red, and we're going to be focusing this paint a little bit more. The bloody red was kind of all over at a high angle, whereas this we're going to start focusing. So we're going to hit the tops of the shoulder pads, the knees, the toe of the boots, the top of the chest plate there, and this is really going to start locking in our gradient, and it's going to be from a really dark red to a really bright vibrant red orange color. And if it looks a little orange, don't worry about that. We are going to be putting a wash on this, and I will be using kind of a black red wash from Army Painter, so it's going to tie all those colors together and bring that orange back into the red range. Speaking of orange, we're going to take some of our Game Air Orange Fire and mix that into our Wild Rider Red. Kind of a majority of that we want to be the Orange Fire, just so this is extra bright, and I'm just going to be focusing on the brightest points of our red. So for this guy, he's got a ton of detail covering stuff up and his little cloak, so it's basically just going to be the top of his cowl, tops of his shoulders, and then like the toe of his boot, maybe the little top of his chest piece. And for our backpack, it's just going to be the tops of those exhaust bells and the little top of the backpack. Now we're going to transition over to our cape section. I'm going to bust out our model color black and hand paint the robe black there, super easy. Like I said, you can sub out any base color black that works for you or that you already have, but just take your time and be careful because you don't want to get any black paint where you don't want it, and just base coat that robe in. And after that, we're going to start airbrushing it. I've got some tire black here, some flow improver. This is going to be a fairly subtle build-up. I've also got a little piece of note paper there shoved up underneath his cape just to protect his leg while I'm doing the wider airbrush painting, because we're kind of not fully covering up our base coat with this, but kind of 70% covering up our base coat with this tire black. So I just want to make sure when I get to those end portions there that his legs are masked off a little bit so I don't spray any of that tire black on our nice red armor. And again, as we're doing this, you're not really going to see a whole lot of color buildup because we are spraying this over black paint. It's really subtle, but I guarantee you, starting with this subtle tire black really makes the look come together. It looks really awesome. You can get really nice, rich black paint on your miniatures doing this tire black method. So basically all you're going to be able to see on camera right now is just a little bit of color transition and mostly just the paint reflecting because it's wet when we spray it on there. So just in person, if you use this paint, you'll definitely be able to see it with the naked eye, just this base coat, but on camera it's going to be really subtle. Next, we're going to mix in some Thunderhawk blue into our tire black that's already in the airbrush, basically just like one little brush dollop into the airbrush there. You can see the difference in color, and this is where we're going to start seeing our color transitions start. So I'm going to be spraying this in kind of near the bottom where the light is going to be hitting the cape most. Remember, he does have a backpack and it's got some of those little streamers and stuff on there, so the part that's up near the small of his back is going to be covered up, so we don't really need to highlight there. And that means the light is going to be hitting the hem of the robe down near the bottom and catching on the tops of those largest folds as it's kind of streaming out behind him. And this one is a lot less subtle. You do want to be careful because the Thunderhawk blue can tend to speckle, so make sure you have plenty of flow improver in there and take your time. If you need to use your thumb or a piece of paper to mask off those legs, feel free to do so. now that we're kind of targeting these areas, I don't feel the need for masking myself. And last, we're going to take our neutral gray. Again, you can sub that out for any base color gray. You can see the paint there, it's much brighter. And we're going to use this as our final highlight. You don't want to go too heavy with this because then it starts looking like gray and not like highlighted black. Then just be careful. You want to hit kind of down near the bottom, just on the bottom edges, just on like the bottom areas of those largest folds. Just kind of pick those out a little bit. Make sure to get a little bit on the front just because light is going to be hitting there as well. And then you're going to have a really nice black robe. And here he is. These are the basic armor workups and the cloth workup that we're doing in this video. We're going to continue working on this guy through videos here on YouTube and on Twitch. So if you want to see more work on this guy, make sure to catch me live on Twitch. And a friendly reminder that over on Patreon, we're doing some painted model giveaways for the month of August. So if you head over there, you can get all the information on that. I'll see you guys next time.